All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get things kicked off here. My name is Jessica Potter. I'll be hosting today's Lunch and Learn. Welcome for those who are new. Welcome for those who have come back to our previous Lunch and Learns. For those of you who aren't aware of what our Lunch and Learns are, we host these every Monday or every week, Monday through Thursday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is really an open hour for you to ask questions, maybe work through any issues that you're having, and really just anything that you have on your mind about decisions. Maybe it doesn't have to be about decisions. Feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A panel. You can ask them directly in chat, or feel free to come off mute and ask those questions out loud. And Caleb, I do see you did submit a question, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Before we jump into the Lunch and Learn, I just want to also let everybody know that we do have Decisions Days coming up, October 4th through the 6th. And this is going to be in Norfolk, so it'll be close to our headquarters here in Virginia. And, there's going to be a lot of different topics that we'll be talking about. It's going to be a chance for our current customers, maybe customers who are thinking about purchasing decisions, or and our employees to congregate, collaborate, and create. And some of those topics are going to be on filling the automation pipeline, so how to identify what to automate next, intelligent service orchestration, improving service coordination with rules, decisions in AI, so how to sequence and consume machine learning models with decisions workflows. We'll also have some topics on lessons learned. So some of those lessons learned will be building industry applications on decisions, learn from the success of others in our decisions developer community, and rock solid deployment strategies from the decisions professional services team. Now, if any of this sounds interesting to you, or you just want to come meet other customers or meet Decisions employees, you can register for that event directly on our website. And I'll go ahead and post this website link right into chat for everybody. But if you come to our website, you can come to our Decisions Days page. You can register right here by providing your first name, last name, your email, some company information, and then you'll also be able to see the agenda. So you'll be able to see exactly what day and what time we'll be having some of these topics and sessions. So we encourage you guys to all join us. There is no cost with this event, and we hope to see you there. And bear with me one moment here while I post this in chat. All right. So we'll go ahead and get kicked off with our question submitted by Caleb. So I see that you are experiencing an issue with getting your pages to refresh properly for reports and tiles, and you're having a hard time getting the tiles to respect the date range filter. Can we demonstrate how to set up these behaviors? Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. And Caleb, feel free to come off mute at any time if you want to kind of talk through this with me. But maybe where we can start is how to refresh tiles and refresh reports on your dashboard. Now, Caleb, are you currently using the send folder change event in any of your flows that will tell the different tiles and reports to update? Nope. Okay. I'll just go ahead and walk through it. So what I'll do, I'm going to go ahead and just create a page here just so that you guys can see what settings need to be set. So I'm going to start by creating my page. And we'll go ahead and start by adding our report viewer so we can talk through how to refresh that. So once you have a report selected or you have a report viewer on your page, in the behavior category in the properties panel, if you open that up and scroll down a little bit, there is a section under refresh. And what we recommend that you check is 3 different things. You can check on any folder change, on contain entity change, or on current folder change. But really what you want is the on current folder change. So once all of these 3 are selected, you'll need to make sure these are selected. When you hit, or once you have your report, or I'm sorry, your page created, in your flow, there's a step, and we'll go ahead and just create a flow here and show you that step. there's a step called send folder change event. And what you'll want to do is pass in the folder ID of your dashboard. So whatever folder that you have associated that page with, you can pass in this ID. So anytime this step is hit in the workflow, it's going to send a notification, or it's in the back end, it's going to send a notification to that particular component on your dashboard and tell it to refresh. So you have to have this step in your flow, but you also want to make sure you have the correct behavior settings checked in your page. And just as a refresher, I'll go back and show you those settings one more time here. So you'll just want to make sure you have in your behavior, you'll have these 3 items selected. Now, Caleb, do you have on your dashboard, do you have these settings checked? If you want, I can give you the ability to share your screen and we can take a look at any of the issues that you're having. And Caleb, you can come off mute if you want. Oh, no problem, no problem. Okay, so yeah, you'll just have to have the, let's see, I think I need to add the folder change event to a new flow. Okay, yep. So if you want, maybe while we're going through some other questions, you can test that out and we can circle back to this if that doesn't work. It's going to be the same thing on your tiles. You'll want to make sure, let me go ahead and add a tile here. You want to make sure you have refresh on any folder change, on refresh on contain entity change, and refresh on current folder change. So it's the same thing. As soon as that step is hit, any of your components on your page or your dashboard that have these settings set, once that send folder change event happens, it'll refresh those individual components. So then we'll kind of move on to the respect date range filter. So the way that this works is you have to select respect date range filter on your actual tile. And then what happens is when you have this checked, if I go in to create a flow or create the flow that's going to be populating that tile, there's going to be some data that my flow is automatically going to have available. So if I go into my data explorer, once I check respect date range filter, I'm going to have this 4 dates data available. And if you want to fetch certain data, maybe that was created in that date range, you're going to have to actually apply that logic within the flow itself. So for instance, if I grab my fetch entity step, maybe we're going to have a tile that, oh, it looks like my computer is slow on me here. And that's because I'm in the wrong part of my toolbox. So if you're fetching data and you want to limit the data that's returned based on that date range, you'll have to add fetch criteria to that data itself. So for instance, if I come in and maybe we're fetching accounts created on a certain date, what I can do is in fetch criteria, if I have date available, here we go, created on date. Maybe we'll say the created on date has to be greater than or equal to. And then what I'm going to pass in here is going to come from that 4 dates data that we have available. So I'll come in here and what I'm going to do is the 4 dates, I'm going to pick the base date. So this is going to be the first date in that date range. So for instance, if I have my filter set for everything in September, the base date is going to be September 1st. So I'll go ahead and select the base date. And then I'll also need to do a little bit of math to get the end date. So the date that we want to cut it off. So the last day of September. So here we have the option to get, and Jared, maybe you can refresh me with this because I know me and you just went over this recently. What is the step that I need to use to get the date once I pass in the for date and the date range?
Ooh, I think you used did you use the subtract dates or days difference or one of those two?
Add days, that's what it is.
Okay,
add
yeah.
days. Okay, yep. So
I've done it both ways. That's why I wasn't sure which step you're referring to.
Yeah. So here what we can do to get that ending date in the date range. The source date we can pass in is that from date, the base date. And then we can pass in how many days we want to add. And that's going to also be available in our for date. So this is going to be the number of rolling days, or no, I'm sorry, number of days. So now the output of this is going to be the ending date in our date range. And what I actually wanted to do was add this. Oops. Add this before our fetch entity step. And maybe I'll rename the output of this step to say last day in range. And then we'll have to add one more piece of criteria here. So that's going to be the date that's less than or equal to. So we're going to say created on date. And I didn't mean to put equals. It's going to be less than or equal to. And I'm waiting for that input to show up. So bear with me one moment here. Maybe I'll close out of my flow and go back into it. But it looks like it's not showing up. So I might have to circle back to this. I can build out an example and send it to you, Caleb. I do have one somewhere on a server. I cannot remember exactly where it's at. But essentially what's going to happen is you just need to use from the Data Explorer your for dates range to be able to calculate that beginning and end date. Does that help, Caleb? Okay, perfect. Great. Glad that was helpful. All right, so I know we had a pre-submitted question from Muriel, who I believe has joined us. So Muriel, maybe we can talk through your question a little bit. I'll read it out loud, and then we can kind of drill into it. So the question that you have is, we have a situation where we will be using decisions to create approval paths for multiple transactions. These should be easily modifiable, and we're hoping to use a single approval subflow and identify the levels of approval within a data structure whose elements are list of approvers. So for instance, to approve a disbursement, it needs to be approved by 2 people. The approval subprocess would pass disbursement as the element to retrieve with the account information for the 2 people or groups currently assigned to approve this type of transaction. And then another example, account closing needs to be approved by 3 people. So closing would call the approval subprocess, passing in closing as the element to retrieve with the account information for the 3 people or groups currently assigned to approve this type of transaction. So Muriel, maybe, I don't know if you've already tried to build this, if you have an example you want to show, or we can kind of drill into this a little bit further to understand the question. Are you trying to have a subflow where you pass in a transaction type and then that subflow just passes out the list of approvers?
No, I have not done any building. I was just thinking
okay.
through it. So, you know, we're going to have potentially 50 different types of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Each one based on a form that asks you to fill in bits of information. Based on the information that you complete, it will determine who needs to approve it. And so if you have disbursement 1 that has 2 people that need to approve it, I want to fill out the form, have the form say, this is a disbursement 1 type. Go to one single approval subflow that says, based on the fact that you fed me disbursement 1, I need to email Murray first, and then I need to email Jessica after she approves. And when the 2 of them have approved, go on your merry way.
Got it. Okay. I think I understand. We can kind of work through that. I did put together a little example that might fit that use case, but we can tweak it if need be. So I'll kind of talk through what I set up, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong, or if it's kind of what you're looking for. So essentially what I did was I created a data structure.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I just named it transaction approval. It can be anything. But in this data structure, it has whatever that transaction type is, whether it's disbursement or account closing. And then in this table, for each of the transaction types, there's going to be a list of approvers. And those approvers can either be individual accounts or groups. And then from there, and I've set up 3 example transaction types with different approvers.
Okay.
From there, what I did was I created a subflow where, in the main logic, essentially once they fill out that form, one of the outputs is going to be what that transaction type is. So we could pass this into the subflow, that transaction type. And what we can do is we can fetch that specific transaction type based on the transaction type name. So it's only going to turn 1 result. And then being passed out of this subflow is going to be those list of approvers, whether it's a list of groups or individual email addresses, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And then what I did is I wasn't sure if you needed sequential approvals or parallel approvals. So we can kind of walk through both of those. So here's that subflow that we just went over, where we'll be passing in the transaction type. The
Okay.
output of it is going to be the list of approvers. And then we're just going to loop through and then create that assignment and dynamically pass in on each loop who is going to be actually approving that assignment. Now, we'll go ahead and debug it and kind of see how this works. I'll use my example transaction type. We'll hit start debugging. Now, if we look into our subflow here and we look at the inputs and outputs, I passed in example as my transaction type. This would probably be disbursement or account closing.
Right.
And then what I'm passing out is here we're assigning it to jessica@decisions.com, and then we're also assigning it to the account closing group.
Okay, so in that scenario, I would expect it to go sequentially.
Okay.
Any one person from account closing group approves, and then it loops through and goes to Jessica. And then when you approve, it's considered approved and can move on.
Perfect. That is exactly how this one's set up.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and we can approve this first one. We'll go back in the main flow so we can kind of watch it loop through here. But the first assignment that we have, it's out of my way. The first assignment is being assigned to accounts closing group. So that's going to be anybody who's in that group is able to come in here and work that task. So I'll go ahead, since I'm in that group, I'll approve it. And then it will go loop back through. It'll grab that second approver. So again, if I look at the input here, it's going to be jessica@decisions.com. So now I can approve that as well. And if they're both approved, it'll go down this approved path. But maybe, the first person approves it and the second person doesn't need to, or if someone in that first group approves it, or I'm sorry, denies it. What I have is I just have this deny path connected to a different end step. So that way we don't go back and grab that next approver. It can just move on, and whatever logic needs to happen if it's denied happens.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay, perfect. I can actually export this and send it to you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
That's what I was just about to ask.
Yeah, perfect. All right, let me check to see if we have any other questions that have come in. I don't see any other questions. And maybe while there's not any questions in, on my other monitor for you, Caleb, I'm going to go try and find that example of the the date range filter, so you can kind of see that live in action. So bear with me one moment while I go find that. All right, I believe I found it. So let me go ahead and open this up for you, Caleb. So if we look at this tile, this one does have respect date range filter. And here we go. So it does look like, yeah, you want to use the add days step. So you can have the 4 dates as your source date and the number of days as days for your input here. So again, just as a refresher, that is going to output or calculate the ending date in that date range. So then if I look at my fetch entities step, we have our from date. That's what it is. I needed to set an alias from it so I could have 2 different inputs. So here we're looking at created on date, but I set an input alias so that way it would be 2 separate input fields available so they wouldn't be named the same thing. But here we have the created on date is greater than or equal to. And then again, we have the created on date is less than or equal to. And then we just changed the input alias to to date. So if I scroll down to the bottom here, we can see the to date is where we want to pass out the output from our add days step. And then the from date is going to be the from date that we have available in our date range. So I will export this particular flow and send that over to you as well. All right, so I see, yes, the input alias. That's what I was missing as well, the input alias. All right. So apologies if I butcher your name here. Jaya Krishna, I see you have your hand raised. You can feel free to come off mute and ask your question.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you can call me JK from FIS. Okay. The question I have is that, so this is a new requirement and I'd like to see how to achieve this in decisions.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So we have various user groups, if you will, and that's where the items get assigned to. And we use external form step in the flow, right? So which means, once the flow arrives into the external step, and then we launch into the external application to bring in the form for showing the actual form with the data for rejection or approval, right? Mm-hmm. So now the question is that, we have different SLAs, right, for each of the flows. So, for example, if the SLA is 2 hours, so what I would like to do is that, as the items arrive into various user group buckets, and I want to automatically look for if anything beyond 2-hour period, let's say, right, and I want to react to it. So basically, I can either, it's almost like an auto aging, right? That's what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. So I want to automatically move that item out of the queue to a separate queue or reject that item automatically without any user intervention. and also send out, I mean, maybe trigger a flow which invokes the external application, where the external application can do the sending of email action, etc. Right? So how do I set up this job that automatically wakes up after the SLA is elapsed and then reacts to it? Now, to just give you an example, in a particular queue, you may have 100 items sitting. Each item could have different SLA time, right? So let's say the first item, it is almost nearing the SLA, and the second item maybe just arrived, right? So it has another 2 hours to elapse in order to reach the SLA time and so on. So you're going to have various degree of the SLA times, in the queue. And the job that we want that wakes up and does all this work should be looking at the individual work items SLA and react accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you tried our assignment dates settings on the wait on external? So essentially what this allows you to do is set those different SLAs. So maybe once it's reached my warning date, or maybe once 2 days have passed, I can specify the warning date. And I can actually, based on whatever parameters you have in your flow, you can actually compute that date. So you can say, I want the start time to be current date time, and I want it to offset it by, maybe for our purposes, we'll just do 2 days. So this is going to say, if this assignment hasn't been completed in 2 days, we've now reached our warning date. And then if you want to trigger an action, we have these assignment events option. So this is going to say, when we hit our warning flow date, our warning flow date, I can now create my own flow that I want to take action on. Maybe it's sending that email, maybe it's auto completing the assignment. So you can build whatever logic you need inside of each individual assignment, warning, or escalate, or expire flows. So you can have different actions on different SLAs.
Okay, so let's say in that external step, you have 2 exit paths. One is the approval path, another one is a rejection path. So can I forcibly go into the rejection path if the SLA time is elapsed?
Yeah, absolutely. So inside of this flow, what you can do is, let me
yeah, you can make that into a built-in form step. That's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I know. I mean, instead of wait on external system, why don't you drag and drop a form, the standard form from decisions? You can use that step and have 2 exit paths, one for approval and one for rejection. Yeah, I want to see if that's possible.
Okay, sure. So I'll just add a regular one for now.
Exactly. Yeah. And here, if you can write 2 exit.
And it looks like my server is giving me a little bit of issues today. Maybe I'm using the wrong one. Or maybe I'm just impatient. All right, so we'll just create. All right, so if you want to force it down the approved or denied path, you'll have to, and if you want to force it down one of those paths without someone actually interacting with the UI, you want like a flow to handle that, you'll have to add what we call action definitions, which those are service outcomes on the wait on external. So for instance, we'll call this like auto deny. And this is going to create another outcome path. But why I have to do this is going to allow me to actually drag and drop a step into my flow that says, okay, I want this action definition to happen. And the action definitions are only available if you're not completing that assignment through the UI. So for instance, if I go in here, I'll set up my SLA. Maybe we'll do the warn one.
For demonstration, yeah, let's make it a 30-second or something so that you can see it in action.
Sure. So we'll do 5 seconds on this one. I'll go build this flow. And in here, what I'm going to want to do is there is a step that allows us to auto-complete assignments.
Mhm.
Let me find that. It's in our internal services category under
Assignments.
assignments.
Okay.
And I believe it's just complete assignment. Nope. Let me find that step. I know it's in here somewhere. Anyone who is on the line, do you guys remember the name of the step to complete like a form assignment where you can pick the outcome path?
I'm looking. Okay.
Actually, I think I might have an example. Bear with me one moment, JK.
Sure.
We're talking about the complete assignment step.
It's the process form assignment response. That's what I'm looking for. Here we go. So this allows you to complete that assignment with a specific response. So here, what I'll do is I'll pass in the assignment ID, which we'll have available in our flow. So this is going to be our form assignment ID.
Okay.
The comment, you can't ignore it, but you can just set it to constant and leave it blank.
Sure.
For files, same thing. You can just set it to constant, but leave it blank. And then for the response, this is going to have to be that action
Auto deny.
outcome. So here I'll put auto deny. There we go. And we can debug this. I'll just attach that. I'll just assign this to myself. I think that, okay, cool. So we'll debug it. We'll wait 5 seconds. And I don't know if this is actually going to work if I have this form open. It might look like I'm trying to work it, but we'll see. Maybe I need to run it outside of the debugger.
Okay, that's fine. And also one other related question on this, right? So this auto deny, is it absolutely mandatory to have that extra action? What if I want to leverage the deny option? Can I do it? Technically I can, right?
So for that process form assignment, the response that you use, it has to be one of the service outcomes or action definitions. It can't be from a button on your form.
And I understand. So if I define the service outcome, right, as deny, can I still set that up in that flow that you made? Instead of auto deny, I would just use deny.
Yeah, absolutely. It just can't match any of the names that are already outcome paths. Yep.
Okay. All right, actually, by creating a new outcome path, it is confusing mainly because these steps are done through the external application in my use case, right? So I don't want to give the third choice to the user to invoke the callback with that auto deny as an option, right? I still want to have just a proven deny. And when we do this auto aging, I still want to use the existing action path, which is deny, right? Anyway,
Gotcha.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, there's also, another way that you might be able to set that up without using the SLAs. Like we also specifically for the weight on external, we have the option to set up flows that you can run on a timed job, and inside of that so here we go, check time span. So maybe every 15 minutes you want to check to see if that assignment's been complete. You can actually, again, build your own flow here to see if it's complete or not. It would be the same thing, kind of like, what do you want to do if it's not complete? What do you want to do if it is complete? So this is another way to handle it, but what I would recommend is using the built-in kind of assignment dates there, because that way you're not having a job run every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes.
That's right. I mean, the weight on external system won't work in this case. I know that because I've used that in other places, and this one is mostly for system weighting. But in my case, I have form weighting, right? That's what user needs to act on. And now I don't know, whatever control that you showed me on the native for the native form, do we have the same thing for the external form, right? That is something we got to check.
Oh, you know what? I was using weight on external system.
I assume it should be all there, right? Same as the native one.
It should be. Let's double check here. And I'm sorry, my server is really acting up today. So yeah, if it's an external form, you can just set it to assigned, and then you'll have that same option here to set up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Which you probably already have it set to assigned.
Now, these assignment options that you showed, right, for the dates, or can those be parameterized? I think so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do compute date, and then rather than doing like a constant offset, you can say select from flow.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah.
If you have, maybe you have a rule generating how long it should be offset. Yep. Okay. You can pass it in that way. Absolutely.
Okay. So it's all built in, right? No extra, like a timer based object need to be created, right? It's going to happen naturally, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Good. Good to know that. Okay.
Cool. Great question.
All right. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if we have any other questions. And it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in, but before we sign off for the day, I just want to give everyone one more reminder for those of you who might have joined after we got started. We do have Decisions Days coming up, and that's going to be October 4th through the 6th, located in Norfolk, Virginia. And this is going to be a place where our team members, our customers, our prospective customers who are looking at the product can all join each other, talk about their processes, talk about decisions, and learn more about what we do and lessons that we've learned, and a lot of different topics that will be covered during those couple of days. And again, just as a reminder, Please register for this if you plan on attending so you can reserve your spot. There is no cost associated with this. This is a free event, and you can just go to decisions.com/decisionsdays2021, or if you just go to our main website at the very top, we're going to have a link that you can click that says register now. You can provide that information as well as take a look at this agenda.
Jessica, a question on this one. Are you planning to do the virtual meeting also on this one, like a Zoom call that we can join remotely, or this is purely, in person?
This event will be in person.
Gotcha.
All righty. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll give everyone another minute or two before we sign off. But if we don't get any questions in the next minute or two, everyone have a fantastic day.